All right, everybody, on today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, The Athletic came out with a pretty good article last week. They do this every year. What is the confidence level the fan base has and the general public has in the front office of every single NHL team? The Avalanche, while they are still towards the top, dipped a little bit. How do we feel about the confidence level that we have in the Avalanche front office and the Western Conference as a whole? New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
Your Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in, making this your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. Make sure to follow us on social media, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram. Questions, comments, concerns, opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. Follow us on our YouTube channel. Over on YouTube, hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Definitely subscribe to our subtext. You are going to want to get on that soon, because when the season starts, there's going to be some exclusive conversations going on over there that we will bring to the each episode once the season gets rolling, which we will only get from the people over on subtext. So link to that is in the show notes below. Subscribe to that. And like I said, chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. All right. As you can see on the rundown, we will get to the Western Conference as a whole. We talked about the Central Division on Monday's episode. So now we're going to talk about the state of the Western Conference and where we feel it is going. Are we okay? It's kind of like a confidence show, right?
Yeah.
We're doing the front office of the Avalanche based on that Athletic article, and we're kind of going to go into the Western Conference as a whole, how it stacks up against the Eastern Conference right now. But we'll start with the Avalanche in particular with that Athletic article. They do this every year, and they rate the confidence level that the fan base and the public has for each team. And they break it down into roster building, cap management, draft and development, trading, free agency, the overall vision of the team, and then they get a total consensus for all of those different categories. And last year, the Colorado Avalanche were number one. This year, they dipped. They're still top 10. They're even top 5. They are number 5 this year. I'll just go through the top 5 as it is. The New Jersey Devils are number 1. Last year, they were 11th. Carolina Hurricanes are number 2. Last year, they were 4th. Tampa Bay Lightning are still up there. Tampa Bay Lightning are 3. They dipped 1. They were 2nd last year. The big mover is at number 4. The Dallas Stars are number 4 when last year they were 24th. That is a huge increase. And the Avalanche dipped. They were, like I said, number 1 last year. Number 5 this year. And if you even want to go one more, maybe this one's a little bit more. It's about the same. So Vegas is number 6. They were 31 the year before.
Good night.
That just shows you that even that fan base is a little crazy. If you had 31, if you were the 31st confidence team from the fan base, man, you are expecting miracles out of that team. That's a whole nother show. I don't want to go. Good God.
If they won the cup.
Well, that this is now they won the cup. Now you have confidence in the team. So we're going to go up to 6th. You know what I mean? So it's just, that is such a
maybe we've been doing it wrong this whole time.
Oh my God. So, all right, if you're watching over on YouTube, I'll put up that card that is over on the Athletic. There it is, of all the things that I was talking about. So for the roster building, the general public gave it an A, while the fan base gave it an A-. Cap management, public is A-, fan base is B+. Draft and development, that's the one I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
B for the public, C- for the fan base. I think the fan base is a little bit more tuned into that
Yeah,
one.
the real ones know. The real ones know.
Trading, both gave an A. Free agency, A- by the public, B+ by the fan base. The vision of the team, the public gave an straight A. The fan base gave an A-, and just as a total is an A for the public and a B+ for the fan base. So just give me your thoughts on do you feel like it was coming that they were going to drop from that number one spot just for the simple fact that they didn't win a cup, and that there were some questions after last year?
Yeah, especially when you look at this, like the split between the public and the fan base, you could see the outside just coming off that cup year. The public's perception of the Colorado Avalanche is still as an elite unit. But the fan base, we went through all 82 games of complete injuries and cycling in that roster, and there's a little bit of doubt. There's a little bit of like bumps and bruises to the emotions of the fan base going through last year and that Seattle exit in the playoffs. So when you list all those grades, I kind of lean towards the fan base. Like,
Sure.
And
Yeah.
honestly, we talked about it, like the everydayers know, when we started making those moves for like Ryan Johansson, like immediately right out of the gate, addressing that need. That was the immediate like boost to the confidence going into this offseason that we needed. So with all those additional pieces, I feel a lot better going into this season. But yeah, I would have probably tallied a lot of the same votes if you asked me as soon as the season ended.
Yeah, I think it's trading. Yeah, I mean, both gave an A, and I think the Avalanche make good, solid trades.
Oh, and you froze there while you're coming back. That also, when it mentions trading, it's who they're trading and who are they not trading as well.
They
when I
have to talk about there.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah, and when they're talking about trading, like the Sam Girard thing sticks out, but like holding on to him still, it's still a win.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people who are maybe looking at that like, why has that not been done yet? And we've been saying over and over, it's not going to happen. Well, if it happens, it will be because of cap management, not because of his play. We've said that so many times, and it seems like it might be going down that road at some point here, right? But for trading, like, yeah, they make good, solid trades. They make sound trades. I think when you look at the draft and development thing, the big gap there between the public giving a B and the fan base giving a C-, I think that for the public just comes from, well, they drafted Cale Makar.
Yeah.
They drafted Nathan McKinnon, even though that was 10 years ago. But they will look at, wow, they drafted those superstars, but you have to look at everything when you're talking about draft and development. You cannot look at just drafting Cale Makar. It would be more immediate, right? I don't want to get into Nathan McKinnon because that was a long time ago in hockey. That's a long time ago. But so for more immediate is Cale Makar. Just because you drafted him and you got him fourth and he's become what he's become does not eliminate everything else that the Avalanche have drafted. They have struggled to draft and develop properly. And I don't want to say like, I'm not sitting here saying I don't like being one of those guys that is like, hindsight's 2020 and like Monday morning quarterbacking it. At the time, how did we feel about those draft picks? At the time, how did we feel about Alex Newhook? I think we all liked it. You know what I mean? And there were so many along the way, maybe not every single one of them. I don't want to say every single one of them, but for most of them, I don't think we were sitting there thinking like that's a terrible pick. So what is it then? Is it the way that the Avalanche developed them? Or are they failing in really being able to develop guys outside of the top 10? It seems that way.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point. And you bringing up Newhook is one of those, like Justin Barron. Like there's a lot of names that like come in and completely right back out. That they it also keep in mind Cale Makar, like when it comes to the public perception of their draft, it's a little bit higher because it feels like this is Cale Makar's second season every season. Like he feels still fresh enough where it's like that's like 2019, like before the bubble. It's been a minute. Kale's been in the league for a little bit now. Like, we like to talk about it's this new thing, but he's been around for a minute. So that C- feels a little bit more relatable because like Newhook's not here and he was the last kind of flashy thing. Sampo Ranta's gone.
Right.
Like, there's
So the interesting thing is you look at the roster building and there's confidence there. For the fan base, it's A-. That's sixth best. And for drafting development, the C- is 28th. So
it's because they can't draft, but they could go get Ross Colton and Miles Wood and
exactly. That's what it is. So the confidence comes, and you feel good that this front office can put together a team. Through free agency and through trading, but you're not confident that they can add, good prospects. And there's a handful that we still don't know. The jury's out on a lot of these guys. If they improve or not improve, if they show up and become a big part of the team, then that draft and development grade will go up. But right now, I think people are sitting there like, just imagine, man. Imagine if all of those like draft picks that you can think of that didn't pan out. I don't want to say they hit a home run with every single one of them. If they could have just hit a double with some of those draft picks, you would be feeling incredible. You feel great about this team where they stand. And I think a lot of people are having that window question. And the reason that question is popping up is because the draft and development part. Can you keep going out and reinventing your team based solely in roster building your team based solely on free agents and trades? That's putting a lot of pressure on that to be perfect. If the draft and development part isn't, it'd be nice to have the draft and developing kind of like, okay, if you don't make a good trade, well, then we had this guy who can come in and kind of take over, and that will override the trade that went bad. But right now you're putting so much stock into all of the other things have to be good because the prospects are a little bit suspect right now. So you're playing with fire a little bit. And it's not like they're just thrown in the towel on drafting and developing. It's just for whatever reason, the past handful of seasons just has not gone their way. We'll see if, if John-Luc Foudy can work out, if Oscar Olausson can work out. Like Gulyayev, who they got this year, who's down the road a little bit. You still have some guys that, okay, let's try this again. Let's try this next crop of guys. If they work out, your draft and development grade goes up. Obviously, if they don't work out, then you're just adding to that list of guys who just are not working out, and that C- is going to go down. There's room to go down for that.
Yes,
surprisingly.
And it's a problem, and you see that shift in Major League Baseball. Like the days of the Steinbrenner buying your Yankee team, like it got you so far, it got you World Series, but those days don't work anymore. Like you see teams like the Atlanta Braves contending because of their prospect system, and you look at the Colorado Avalanche. Yes, they could get by with the name, and they could put in these Ross Coltons, Miles Wood, like the list goes on and on and on, but you have to bring in some youth and some prospects because when you're paying these experienced veteran guys, you need those cheaper prospect contracts to get through on the ELC. It's much easier to build a team that way, and the Avs just haven't been able to do that, honestly, post bubble.
Yeah, it's something that and that they're sitting there saying like that has to improve. And man, like as far you eliminate that, everything else, like the vision part, like this front office is always going to want to compete, and they don't like to even the year that with the dumpster fire of a season, and everyone's like, oh, it's a rebuild, and I think in some they overachieved that following year by getting into the postseason, but that shows you how quickly that this team can turn it around. So I think this front office is always in. They're always full in, all in, put all your cards on the table, and they will always do that to the best of their ability. So as far as the vision goes, I'm pretty confident in this front office. And maybe some people don't like some specific moves that have been made, and we can debate that. But they do it. The moves that they make are with the the best interest of the team in mind in going to get another championship. And I don't think you can really deny that part of it.
And I'd love to see what this grade looks like next year after seeing
Well,
Erod somewhere else. And I'd like to see the moves that they made this year and the players they allowed to let walk.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what the vision looks like this year.
It's all going to depend on where they end up because, you go win the cup and then you follow it up the next year with a first round elimination, the confidence in the fan base is going to dip.
Yep.
And you're right. If the guys that they let walk, if they have a repeat of a first round elimination, it's going to dip even more because why did you let those guys go? They could have helped you. If you let those guys go and you improve, you get to the Stanley Cup final, your confidence is going to go up because wow, they knew what they were doing. We wanted those guys back, but they let them go, got some new guys in and improved over last season. We'll see how it goes. So it's kind of a fun thing to look at year after year. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on it and do this again this time next year. For now, let's hear from Birddogs. Let me move some stuff around here over on YouTube, and then we'll get back into the Western Conference Final. But right now, we're going to hear from Birddogs. There, look at Kyle. Look at that. He comes prepared. Which ones are those, sir?
These
are you are showering yourself in Birddogs. Which ones? What do you got there?
These are the sweatpant version. I know I've been showing off the shorts, but it's about to start getting colder. I believe it in my soul. It's going to start getting colder.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
They're wonderful looking shorts and pants, and I like the inside. Look at that, like that lime green on inside lining. Excellent stuff. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts and pants are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg, giving you that truly sculpted look. And they do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit so much better. They fit better than regular shorts, which are usually made of stiff, restricting cotton. But Birddogs, they don't, because they fix the issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice on movement. So make sure to go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter the promo code LockedOnNHL at the checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your purchase. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free water bottle at checkout. And we can guarantee you will not want to take your Birddogs off. I know Kyle hasn't.
Wearing a pair right now.
All right. So, like I said, on Monday, we did the Central Division, kind of just talked about the state of the Central, how things look currently, how we think they look for the future. And let's do the same thing for the Western Conference. Everybody talks about the East and how much of a beast that is and how they just kick the snot out of each other during the regular season. And maybe the Western Conference can cash in on that by the time they get to the Stanley Cup final. I don't know if that's the reason, but what the Western Conference can do is brag that the last two champions are in the West. And it's not, I don't want to make it seem like the East is just so far above the West. But I think just top to bottom, the East is more competitive, where the West, it's like the West as a whole is kind of like the Central Division. Like it's top heavy. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they can put up a fight by far in the playoffs. But what do you think of the Central as things stand right now?
When it comes to the West, like I love what you were saying. Like there's like 6 to 8 teams in the East that you can make a serious conversation for winning the Cup. Last year, as everything finished out in the Western Conference, the 5th best team in the Western Conference was the Los Angeles Kings,
who you didn't really feel were going to make like a deep run, right?
Yeah. So that's where it tops out. So you like your top 4, it's your top 2 in the Pacific and your top 2 in the Central. And then the Los Angeles Kings come rounding it out. So, and then you in the East, you have 3 or 4 other teams that you could make a good case could win the Stanley Cup. So that's where that balance comes in. And when you look at the West last year compared to this year, I don't know if there's that much of a change.
So let's do this. And I know we were gonna save the East for another show, but can we at least talk about this? So, like you said, there's what 6 teams from last year's playoff that you felt had a legitimate shot.
Mhm.
Okay, here's the 8 teams that made the playoffs. Boston, sure. At the start of the playoffs, absolutely, they had to be the favorite going in. Carolina, sure. A lot of people picked them that they could win it. New Jersey, I think maybe some people thought maybe it was a little bit too early for them,
Yeah.
but they were number 3, so sure they had a shot. Toronto, all jokes aside, still had a good team, and anything is possible, obviously. The Rangers, maybe a little bit of an outside chance, but maybe there's a small smattering of people think, maybe they could go on a run. Tampa Bay still had that Tampa Bay, hanging over their head of just like, we are the Lightning, can turn it on in the playoffs. The Islanders, maybe that's the one team that you felt, I'll say this, maybe the 2 teams that the start of the playoffs that you didn't think were going to do anything were the Islanders and Florida.
Yeah.
And Florida did.
Yeah.
So really there was one team that like in the Islanders that didn't really do anything, and maybe they had confidence that you were not going to go very far, along with the Panthers, who did go to the end.
Yep.
And then on the West, you have Vegas, who sure, I mean, they were number 1. A lot of people thought they could do what they did. A lot of people were in on Edmonton. I wasn't, but some people just felt like it was their year. You're going to have Colorado and maybe Dallas last year. Sure, you can throw Dallas in there. But yeah, everybody else, Los Angeles, you didn't really think they were. You didn't think Minnesota was. You didn't think Seattle was. And you knew Winnipeg wasn't. So it is very, it is those 3.5 teams that are really carrying the West right now. And I don't see that changing this year.
No. And I think, and we made this discussion on Monday when it came to the Central. I think it's conference wide. I think just the stronger teams got stronger, and and we talked about the top teams in the West last year, and we kind of joke around about the dumpster fire that was Chicago. The Anaheim Ducks were the worst team in the West last year, with a point differential of -129. So.
Nobody else was 100.
Yeah, and
in the West anyway.
And we all just kind of completely forgot that, because Chicago, was fun to watch them not kind of up there in the middle, and they were on the down, like on the downturn. So everybody kind of got their last laugh after the quote unquote dynasty that they had. But Anaheim was atrocious, and they really honestly have not improved. So
I think they've improved. So I think they've improved enough, and because they're a young team, those guys have another year under their belt. So yeah, I think they should be a little bit more improved. So much so maybe they get to 13th in the conference rather than 16th.
I will say last year there was a lot of hype around Calgary. Like right before the playoff time, like there was like this team, if they could get it together, they could do something. I will say going into this year, this Calgary team scares me a little bit more.
I have to give you credit, sir, because at the beginning of last season, you were not sold on Calgary. You were not, and I thought they were a shoo-in to make a playoff spot. And I can't remember if you said that they'll get a playoff spot, but I don't know. I can't remember if you said that it's going to be a struggle for them. I think you did say it was going to be a little bit of a struggle for them. Didn't see that coming. And that, why don't we get into that? As far as, let's get into like predicting the West, right? Let's do that. So we're pretty confident in Vegas, Colorado, Dallas, and Edmonton, right? I think we'd have to say like Edmonton should get in this year again. Do you have any objections to any of those 4?
No, I feel like that is your cream of the crop, to quote the wise prophet Macho Man Randy Savage.
And I would even put Los Angeles in there if you want to push it out to 5.
They did get PLD. They get Pierre-Luc Dubois.
I think Los Angeles is going to be a good team, pretty much on par with what they did last year, which was 104 points. I think they can do that. Do you put Seattle in again? I think so. I think Seattle's pretty comfortable to have a playoff
Belmar. that means you're automatically getting up to the second round.
Does it? All right. So there's 6 teams. As far as who made the playoffs last year, Minnesota and Winnipeg were the other ones. Minnesota could possibly, yeah. Winnipeg, I don't think so. I think that's your one team that you're pretty confident to say is going to be the change. Everybody else, you're pretty confident that those 7 teams are going to remain, with the only one being Winnipeg out. And who replaces them? I think the consensus would be Calgary. So there's not much, like we're on the East. It's like, hey, you could ask a half a dozen people and they could give you a half a dozen different playoff scenarios. Where in the West, it's not that way. It's Winnipeg's not going to be there, and probably Calgary is going to replace them, and all the other teams are the same.
And it's funny that it comes down to Winnipeg and Calgary, where both locker rooms have been Winnipeg's been a quiet dumpster fire in the locker room for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And Calgary last year was an open dumpster fire. Like there was a lot of friction there. And going into this season, if they could get that figured out, Calgary will be in the playoffs and break some hearts in the playoffs. But if it turns out to be a repeat of last year, I see it turning into Vancouver 2.0. And then it's just everybody's jumping ship at the deadline. Coaches are fired. We're going to have to retool this organization. And then all this hype that we're giving to Calgary, throw it away because they're retooling the entire organization.
And what about the future of the West? I mean, you're pretty, you like seeing teams like that are at the bottom kind of start to improve. And you're pretty confident a team like Chicago, just with the history that they have, they will improve. You're pretty confident St. Louis will improve. Nashville will want to, step it up in the next couple of years. Even San Jose, like those teams don't like where they are right now. And you feel like they're going through the right procedures to get back to where they once were. And maybe Anaheim takes them a little bit longer. But you don't have confidence that teams like Arizona are going to do that. I don't know what's going on in Vancouver. I don't really feel good about that. I don't feel good about Winnipeg. So those are the teams that are kind of like coming down as those other teams are going up.
And see, the thing is also at the top with Edmonton and Vegas. We talked about windows in the first segment about the vision. You want to talk about Vegas's window. This. Like that is a tight window. They almost didn't have that team put together last year because LTIR and cap. It's going to be hard to repeat what they did last year. Edmonton, the McDavid thing is looming. And each year it gets louder. It gets louder. And it's going to be hard to put that team together, especially if they keep hitting a wall in the playoffs. McDavid's going to want to win somewhere. So that's going to be a problem. So that window, it's not so much an Edmonton window, it's a McDavid window.
Sure. I think that's the best way to put it. Because as long as he's there, they're in.
Those two teams, they could fall off the top. And they have to go somewhere, which rises everybody else.
Right.
So there's not a lot of change that has to be done. You just have to ride it out. And these teams that you mentioned, they're not doing a lot, but what they're building, they could continue to build on for just a little bit, not making a lot of moves, but they could rise to making these playoff spots and surprising people and working their way up because, hey, Colorado and Dallas are right behind. They got to start figuring some stuff out in the next couple of years. And then they could be shifting and coming right back up. So that's what the future looks like in the West. It's whose window's closed and who's building it right.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, but I think at least for this year, I think, and it kind of stinks a little bit, like being like an Avalanche fan or a Dallas Stars fan. You pretty much have a playoff spot locked up on day one. And I hate saying it's not like a cocky way of saying it. It's just the way that division is, or the conference is lined up right now, is there's not a lot of teams pushing the teams at the top. No. You don't have it. So we'll see. Who do you think? Like, do you think there's going to be more than just one team, more than just one Winnipeg team that drops off? Or do you feel like there's going to be multiple? I kind of want to know in the comments section. So fire away on anything that we talked about today, including the front office confidence stuff as well. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up for today. We'll have a crossover, kind of finalizing on who that's going to be. We have a couple more left before the summer is over. So that's going to wrap it up. for Wednesday's episode. We'll be back on Friday, but thank you for tuning in and making this one your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. For Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan, I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We'll see you guys on Friday.